The morning sun cast long shadows across the construction site in Boston's rapidly developing Seaport district, an area quickly transforming from industrial zone to a showcase of modern architecture. A cool autumn breeze carried the sounds of machinery and workers preparing for another day of work. Alex Parker, a 32-year-old structural engineer with an impressive degree from MIT and 5 years at a prestigious firm, arrived at the site in his tailored suit and polished shoes that seemed out of place among the dirt and concrete. This was his first project as lead engineer, a 22-story luxury apartment building that would define his career trajectory. "Morning, Mr. Parker," called out the site supervisor, Mike Donovan, a burly man with 20 years of experience who had seen his fair share of young, ambitious engineers come and go. "Good morning, Mike. How's progress on the foundation work?" Alex asked, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who believed theoretical knowledge trumped practical experience. "We're on schedule, though we've got a small issue with the southeast corner. The soil composition is different than expected. I've brought in someone who might help, has decades of experience with Boston's fickle ground." Alex's expression tightened. "You brought in outside help without consulting me. I'm the engineer of record here. I should be making these calls." Mike sighed. "Just thought you'd appreciate another perspective. He's worked on half the buildings in this city." Before Alex could respond, a weathered pickup truck pulled into the site. Out stepped an elderly man, perhaps in his early 70s, wearing faded work clothes and a worn Red Sox cap. His hands were calloused, his skin tanned and lined from decades under the sun. He walked with a slight limp, but moved with the assured confidence of someone comfortable on a construction site. "That's Frank Morales," Mike said. "Been in construction since before either of us was born." Alex watched as workers stopped to greet Frank with obvious respect. Handshakes, pats on the back, warm smiles. It irritated him. This wasn't how things were supposed to work. The chain of command existed for a reason. When Frank approached them, Mike made introductions. "Frank, this is Alex Parker, our lead engineer. Alex, meet Frank Morales, best mason I've ever known." Frank extended his hand with a warm smile. "Pleasure to meet you, son. Beautiful design you've got here." Alex gave a perfunctory handshake. "Thank you, Mr. Morales. I understand you're here about the foundation issue?" Mike mentioned some concerns about the southeast corner. Boston's waterfront can be tricky. Used to be all landfill, you know. Alex felt a flash of irritation. Yes, I'm well aware of Boston's geological history. It was covered extensively in my advanced soil mechanics courses." Frank nodded patiently. "Course. Just thought I'd share what I've seen working these grounds for 50 years. I appreciate that, but we've conducted extensive soil testing with state-of-the-art equipment. The issue is a minor one that my team has already addressed in the updated plans." Alex pulled out his tablet, displaying complex diagrams. "We've recalculated the load-bearing requirements and adjusted the reinforcement specifications accordingly." Frank studied the plans silently. Then, with a gentleness that somehow made Alex even more defensive, he said, "Those calculations look sound on paper, but this particular corner of the seaport has unexpected clay deposits that shift during spring thaws. Seen 3 buildings develop cracks from similar foundations." Alex felt his face flush as several workers and Mike looked on. "With all due respect, Mr. Morales, modern engineering methods have advanced considerably. We account for seasonal variations in our models." "No disrespect meant," Frank said, raising his hand slightly. "Just offering what I've learned the hard way. Well, while I appreciate old-school wisdom, this project is being built according to current engineering standards and specifications." Alex's tone was dismissive, loud enough for nearby workers to hear. "We don't rely on hunches and folk wisdom anymore." An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Mike looked embarrassed. Some workers exchanged glances. Frank's expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes dimmed slightly. "Understood, Mr. Parker. I'll let you get back to your work." Frank tipped his hat slightly and walked away. Mike gave Alex a disappointed look. "That wasn't necessary." "Look, I can't have random people coming in questioning my design decisions. It undermines the entire project. As Alex walked away to inspect another area of the site, he overheard a worker say to another, "Did he really just talk to Frank Morales like that, the man who built Hancock Tower?" Alex paused briefly but continued walking, pretending not to hear, even as a seed of doubt began to form in his mind. Later that day, in the site trailer office, Alex found some old construction magazines while looking for documents. Flipping through them idly, he stopped when he saw a black and white photo of a construction crew from decades ago. In the front row, much younger but unmistakable, was Frank Morales, pointing to plans for the iconic Hancock Tower while talking with a group of engineers. The caption read, "Frank Morales, Center, Chief Foreman, discusses critical structural adjustments that saved millions in redesign costs." Alex sat down heavily, the reality of his mistake beginning to weigh on him. He had humiliated a true Boston construction legend in front of the entire site. The following week brought heavy rain to Boston, delaying work and putting everyone on edge. Alex found himself under increasing pressure from the development company to keep the project on schedule despite the weather setbacks. As he walked through the muddy site, checking on the foundation work that had resumed that morning, he noticed a group of workers gathered around the problematic southeast corner. Drawing closer, Alex saw Frank Morales kneeling in the mud, examining the newly poured concrete. Mike stood nearby, concern evident on his face. "What's going on here?" Alex demanded, struggling to keep his voice even. Mike turned. "We've got a problem. There's some cracking starting already." Alex pushed forward to see for himself. Sure enough, hairline fractures were spreading across the surface, exactly where Frank had warned there might be issues. "This shouldn't be happening," Alex muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "The mix was specified correctly. The reinforcement is well within code requirements." Frank stood slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. "It's not the concrete or the rebar, son. It's what's happening underneath." Alex felt a flash of irritation at being called son again, but the evidence before him tempered his response. "What do you mean?" "The vibration from the pile driving next door is causing the clay layer to shift more than your models predicted. Same thing happened at the Simon Tower project in '82. "That's impossible. We accounted for adjacent construction activity," Alex insisted, though with less conviction than before. Frank simply shrugged. "Might want to check your historical data. The geological surveys from the '70s didn't go deep enough in this particular area. Common mistake." Alex wanted to argue, but found himself without a good counter-argument. Instead, he turned to Mike. "Let's halt work on this section until I can consult with my team." After everyone dispersed, Alex remained, staring at the cracks. His phone rang, the client calling for a progress update. As he prepared to answer with excuses about the weather, he noticed Frank sitting alone in his truck, reviewing what looked like old blueprints. Making a split-second decision, Alex ignored the call and walked to Frank's truck, swallowing his pride. "Mr. Morales," he began awkwardly, "I was wondering if you might have some time to discuss potential solutions." Frank looked up, his expression revealing neither vindication nor judgment. "Of course. Happy to help." For the next hour, they sat in Frank's truck as rain drummed on the roof. Frank produced historical records of the area's development, hand-drawn maps, old photographs, and notes from projects dating back decades. Alex was stunned by the wealth of practical knowledge that no textbook or computer model had ever captured. "How did you compile all this?" Alex asked, genuinely impressed. 52 years of getting my hands dirty," Frank replied with a small smile. "Started as a laborer when I was 16, worked my way up, never had the chance for formal education like you, but these sites have been my classroom." Something about Frank's humility made Alex's earlier behavior seem even more shameful. "I owe you an apology for how I spoke to you last week. It was unprofessional and disrespectful." Frank waved it off. "Not the first time, won't be the last. This industry has always had tension between formal learning and practical experience. Both have their place. The workers mentioned something about the Hancock Tower. Frank chuckled. I was just a foreman back then. But yes, I worked on it. Also helped solve some of the infamous problems after it was built. Windows popping out, the swaying issues. Alex's eyes widened. The Hancock Tower case study was legendary in engineering schools, a spectacular design that had faced equally spectacular challenges. You know, Frank continued, I've always admired engineers. What takes me decades to learn through trial and error, you folks can figure out through equations and models. But sometimes the ground doesn't read the textbooks. They spent the afternoon developing a modified approach to the foundation issue, one that incorporated both Alex's technical knowledge and Frank's practical experience. By the time the rain stopped, they had a solution that would save the project significant time and money. As they walked back to the site office to share their plan with Mike, Alex felt a weight lifting. Thank you for being willing to help, despite how I treated you. Frank smiled. In construction, grudges are a luxury we can't afford. Buildings don't care about our egos. They'll stand or fall based on the truth of what we do, not what we think of each other. In the days that followed, Alex and Frank implemented their hybrid solution. Workers watched with interest as the young engineer and the old mason worked side by side, each contributing their unique skills. As their modifications took shape, Alex realized how many nuances of practical construction weren't captured in his computer models. One afternoon, while testing the hardness of newly cured concrete, Frank shared stories of disastrous projects he'd helped salvage over the years. Each story contained a valuable lesson that Alex eagerly absorbed. The hardest thing for many young engineers to understand, Frank explained, is that materials have personality. Concrete doesn't just follow formulas. It responds to weather, to handling, to time. It's almost like a living being. Alex, who once would have dismissed such characterization as unscientific, now understood exactly what Frank meant. His equations were crucial, but Frank's experience with the quirks of materials was equally valuable. When the first test results confirmed the success of their collaborative solution, Alex felt a different pride than he was used to, not just in solving the problem, but in what he'd learned through the process. Over the next month, a transformation occurred that went beyond the physical progress of the building. Alex and Frank established an unlikely partnership that became the talk of the construction site. Each morning, they would walk the perimeter together, Alex with his tablet full of specifications and Frank with his decades of intuition. The solution they'd developed for the foundation problem had worked perfectly. By implementing a modified drainage system based on Frank's experience with similar soil conditions and reinforcing it with advanced materials Alex had researched, they'd created a foundation that was both innovative and practical. Word spread beyond their project. Other engineers from Alex's firm began stopping by to meet the elderly mason who seemed to have a mental map of every inch of Boston's underground terrain. Frank, for his part, began asking Alex to explain the newer computational models that had revolutionized structural engineering since his active days. One afternoon, as they reviewed plans for the upper floors, Alex noticed Frank wincing slightly as he stood up from examining a blueprint. "Everything okay?" Alex asked. Frank rubbed his lower back. "Just the usual complaints from an old body that's carried too many concrete blocks. Nothing serious." Alex hesitated, then asked the question that had been on his mind. "Frank, if you don't mind me asking, why are you still doing this? Most people your age would have retired long ago." Frank looked across the site, watching the workers with a mixture of pride and nostalgia. "See that skyline? I helped build nearly a third of those buildings. When you create something that stands tall, that houses people's lives and dreams, it becomes part of you." He paused. "And to be honest, retirement didn't suit me. My wife passed 5 years ago, and sitting at home alone just gave me too much time to miss her." Alex felt a rush of empathy. "I'm sorry about your wife. 52 wonderful years together. Can't complain." Frank smiled sadly. but she made me promise not to become a recluse. Said my knowledge shouldn't die with her. Their conversation was interrupted when Mike approached with concern etched on his face. "We've got visitors," he said, nodding toward the site entrance where 3 people in business attire were signing in. "That's Lawrence Weber," Alex said, recognizing the development company's notoriously demanding CEO. "What's he doing here? We weren't expecting an inspection today." "Heard there was a problem with the foundation that required redesign," Mike explained. "He's probably here to see if we're behind schedule." Alex felt a flicker of panic. Weber was known for his ruthlessness and lack of patience for delays. "The redesign actually put us ahead of schedule and under budget, but he might not see it that way initially." Frank placed a reassuring hand on Alex's shoulder. "Then we'll make him see it." As Weber and his associates approached, Alex stepped forward to greet them, introducing himself and Mike. Weber barely acknowledged them, his eyes scanning the construction site critically. "Mr. Parker, I understand there were structural issues with the foundation that required significant changes to the approved plans," Weber said without preamble. "Changes that weren't authorized by our architectural team." Before Alex could respond, Frank stepped forward. "Lawrence Weber," he said with a warm smile. "Been a long time." Weber's stern expression faltered as he took in Frank's weathered face. "Frank Morales, what are you doing here?" "Lending a hand, keeping my old brain busy." Weber turned to his associates. "Frank here saved the Riverfront project back in '95 when we had that unexpected bedrock issue." He returned his attention to Frank. "You must be, 70 now?" 73 next month, Frank confirmed. "And still showing up the young folks," Weber said with unexpected warmth, then addressed Alex. "If Frank's involved in the modifications, I'm less concerned, but I still need to understand the changes and their impact on our timeline and budget." Alex seized the opportunity. "Actually, Mr. Weber, I'd like Frank to explain how we approached the foundation issue, if that's all right." For the next 20 minutes, Frank and Alex walked Weber through their collaborative solution, explaining how they'd not only solved the immediate problem, but had improved upon the original design in ways that would enhance the building's long-term stability and reduce maintenance costs. By the end of the explanation, Weber's concern had transformed into impressed approval. "This is exactly the kind of innovative problem-solving we need, the combination of modern engineering and hard-earned expertise." He looked between Frank and Alex. "Frankly, I'm surprised to see such collaboration. Usually there's more tension between the old school and new school approaches." Alex smiled. "We had our moments initially, but we found common ground." "Well, I'm impressed," Weber said. "So impressed that I'm considering bringing both of you into our Newton project planning. We're breaking ground next quarter, and with the historical buildings adjacent to the site, we could use this kind of dual perspective." After Weber and his team departed, Alex turned to Frank in amazement. "I can't believe you know Lawrence Weber personally." Frank chuckled. "When you've been around as long as I have, you've met most of the key players. Some of them were just apprentices carrying lumber when I first knew them." "He never would have listened to me alone," Alex acknowledged. "And he might have dismissed me as just a sentimental old-timer," Frank countered. "Together, though, we make a convincing case." That evening, as the sun set behind Boston's skyline, Alex invited Frank to dinner. They sat at a small restaurant overlooking the harbor, sharing stories and insights. Alex about his ambitions and the pressure he felt to prove himself. Frank about the changes he'd witnessed in the city and the industry over decades. Frank shared stories of early Boston, when the urban landscape was completely different. He had worked on the rebuilding after the Great Fire in the 70s, witnessed the transformation of the polluted bay into a stunning waterfront district, and helped erect the Prudential Tower that had redefined the city's skyline. "You know what I've learned from you, Frank," Alex said as they finished their meal. "That buildings aren't just technical achievements, they're human stories. Every beam and column represents someone's work, someone's judgment call, someone's pride." Frank nodded appreciatively. And you've reminded me that innovation isn't my enemy, that new techniques and materials can make buildings safer, more efficient, more beautiful than anything we could manage in my heyday. As they parted ways that night, they weren't just an engineer and a mason anymore. They were two builders with a shared purpose, bridging generations of construction knowledge. 6 months later, the tower reached its final height. The traditional topping out ceremony brought together everyone who had contributed to the project: architects, engineers, contractors, and every worker who had helped transform blueprints into reality. Alex stood at the podium, looking out at the assembled crowd. The morning sun glinted off the glass facade of their creation, now the newest addition to Boston's iconic skyline. "Before we place the final beam," Alex began, "I want to take a moment to recognize that buildings like this one aren't created by drawings or algorithms alone. They rise from the combined wisdom and effort of everyone here." His eyes found Frank in the crowd. "Some of us bring formal education and cutting-edge technology to the table. Others bring decades of hands-on experience and historical knowledge that can't be found in any textbook. It's the fusion of these perspectives that creates structures that will stand the test of time." Alex paused, then continued in a more personal voice. "When I started this project, I thought I knew everything I needed to know. But I've learned that construction isn't just about physics and mathematics. It's about respect for the past, understanding the present, and planning for the future." The ceremony concluded with the raising of the final beam, adorned with signatures from every person who had worked on the project. As the crowd dispersed for the reception, Alex noticed Frank standing alone, gazing up at the building with an expression of quiet satisfaction. "Penny for your thoughts?" Alex asked, joining him. "Just thinking about my first project, a small warehouse by the Charles River. Long gone now." Frank smiled. "Back then, I never imagined I'd be part of something like this." "You've been more than part of it," Alex said. "This building wouldn't exist, at least not in this form, without you." Frank shook his head modestly. "You'd have figured it out eventually." "Maybe, but not as elegantly, and certainly not on schedule." Alex hesitated. "I've been meaning to ask you something. Weber's Newton project is moving forward, and he's offered me the lead engineering role." "Well deserved," Frank said sincerely. "The thing is, I told him I'd only accept if you came on as a formal consultant. Historical construction advisor is what he's calling the position." Frank looked surprised. "At my age?" "Especially at your age," Alex countered. "Your knowledge is irreplaceable, and selfishly, I'm not ready to stop learning from you." Before Frank could respond, they were approached by a group of young apprentices from the masonry team, eager to speak with the legendary Frank Morales. Alex stepped back, watching as Frank patiently answered their questions, his weathered hands gesturing to illustrate techniques that had been perfected over a lifetime. Later that afternoon, Alex found Frank in what had become their usual meeting spot, a quiet corner of the site overlooking the city. They stood in companionable silence, admiring their handiwork from a distance. "I've been thinking about your offer," Frank finally said. "I'll do it, on one condition." "Name it." "That part of my role involves formal knowledge transfer, teaching sessions for your younger engineers, maybe some field trips to buildings around the city to explain how they were constructed and what problems they faced." Alex grinned. "Weber will love that idea. Preserving institutional knowledge is a passion of his." Frank nodded, seeming satisfied. "You know, when I first met you, I pegged you as another arrogant young engineer who thought his degree made him infallible. And I thought you were just a relic of the past, stuck in outdated ways," Alex admitted. "We were both wrong." "That's the beauty of construction," Frank said, gesturing toward their building. "It forces us to confront reality. Concrete doesn't care about your credentials or my experience. It cracks or it holds based on whether we understood the truth of the situation." The setting sun cast long shadows across the city, silhouetting their creation against the darkening sky. Alex reflected on how differently this project might have turned out if he'd maintained his initial dismissiveness, the structural issues that might have emerged years later, the lessons he would have missed, the friendship that would never have formed. "You know what else I've learned from you, Frank?" Alex said quietly. "That the most important things we build aren't the structures themselves, but the relationships and knowledge we pass along. Those are the foundations that truly last." Frank smiled, tears glistening slightly in his eyes. "In that case, young man, I'd say we've built something pretty spectacular together." 4 months later, a special plaque was added to the lobby of the new building, dedicating it not just to the investors and architects, but to the builders of Boston, past and present. Alongside were 2 photographs, one showing the modern skyline, the other a historical photo of builders from decades past, with Frank Morales clearly visible among them. Already working together on the next project in Newton, Alex and Frank had initiated a mentorship program that paired young engineers with experienced craftsmen, building bridges between generations and ensuring that hard-won knowledge wasn't lost. As night fell over Boston, the lights of their tower illuminated, joining the constellation of buildings that defined the city's skyline, each one a testament to the generations of builders who had come before and those who would follow, carrying forward both innovation and tradition in an unbroken chain of human achievement.